We're going to talk about something we haven't talked about, believe it or not, over the last 2 days. So this is great. It's a new topic. It's fresh. Haiyan, first, tell people here about yourself, where you work, and why you're interested in security and XDR.
So again, my name is Haiyan Song. I'm the EVP and General Manager for our security and distributed cloud services at F5. Just an honor to be here and conversing with you all on, I think, one of the most popular topics that this RSA is all around XDR. And I actually worked in companies prior to F5 at Splunk, ArcSight, HP. So this is certainly near and dear to my heart as an evolution.
Fantastic. And you have a great background to share some wisdom today, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because all those companies were revolutionary in what they did, and we're on a new cusp of innovation, I think. So what are one of the observations you're seeing as the industries evolve? SIM, what's happening next? How is that directionally moving towards a new way of thinking about security, thinking centralized, decentralized as an example?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we all probably experienced in the last 2 years, the reason I mentioned last 2 years, I think this is like the first RSA we're actually having in person, and the last one was a little over 2 years ago. I still remember at the beginning of the pandemic. It's the fact that digitization or digital transformation or whichever word you like to use got accelerated so much because of what's needed to keep our life going and keep our business going during COVID and during the pandemic. It really sort of changed the landscape of security. It changed the landscape of applications. So let me just sort of talk about a little bit from early days, right? I sort of started at ArcSight, and our revolution or evolution of SIM goes from, at the very beginning, about 100 EPS, and then later on, 1,000 EPS, and before we're just dealing with IDS data, and then now we're taking identity. So there's a slow evolution, if you think about it, happened over years. Yeah. And if you look at the last 2 years, a lot of things just happened because everything is digital, and people are using their phones to really survive, and some can thrive. But in order to do that, a lot of the decisions has to happen where the application is running and where the interaction is happening. So the model of everything was centralized, and you can sort of go back to the mothership and have decision made and then get things done, is not really conducive for the new decentralized world. I think you see a lot of our security vendors, right? I think the last couple of years, there's new words of EDR, NDR, but if you think about holistically, there's never going to be one product can solve all the security problems, and you still need to bring a whole village together. And so you need to be open, and you need to have an XDR type of solution to bring the holistic picture and orchestrate out. So I'm very excited on sort of the new, I would say, generation of solutions that help our security operation team, and beyond just security. I think it's for risk and things is being a lot more important to the business.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think the whole trend, though, of trying to big things together somehow while they're becoming more distributed at the same time is kind of counterintuitive, right? And that is the value that XDR promises: correlate over everything, respond against everything. So where do you think we are in that map of time? Are we in the Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm early days? Do you see us hitting mainstream yet? Just when you talk to your customers at F5, where do you sense people understand the trend of XDR is today?
I don't know how I put it into, there's different industries, different sort of companies, I think, are at different stages in adopting certain technology. And if you use the crossing the chasm, I think right now, it's a lot of the early adopters, the visionary is like, okay, we understand this is the new evolution of what we need for the SOC and for the security team to run what they need to do, and for us to automate and decentralize a lot of the detection and response. But in the meantime, this is not sort of like, wow, it's a brand new thing, and this is just an evolution of perfecting a lot of the things we've been doing. So people shouldn't be thinking of this, oh, I need a new budget, and you just really a new paradigm, a new mindset, and adopting technologies and leveraging the evolution and the new improvement, new innovation in all the security technology, but bring them together.
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart, and I think everybody in security now is sort of risk averse to someone saying it is revolutionary, right? Because it's too disruptive. So we need disruption that's palatable and can be consumed. So one of the things that I know you're passionate about around digitization is APIs. Now everybody's talking about application program interfaces, RESTful, blah, blah, blah. Vendors can work with each other through simply sharing API structure. That said, well, it's also part of the distributed idea that you have, but isn't that a new security area of concern? Where do you feel APIs, as much of an enabler they are, how much do we have to watch that transition so that we're careful about how we walk down that path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now at F5. So if you think about the new digital world, right, in the last sort of couple of years especially, that's touching every part of our life. What's powering that new digital experience is applications, and it's either some even legacy applications, but a lot of those are new applications that's built using cloud services and using APIs that's already running in the cloud. And I equate that with the concept of the supply chain. If you think about everybody talk about supply chain challenges in the last 2 years, and the API sort of based applications, I think about that as the digital supply chain. And because how important those API services are to what we do, and because that's probably not the best understood from a security control perspective, from the visibility perspective, there's a lot of new opportunities for people to innovate. But in the meantime, there's a lot of opportunities for hackers to exploit.
Absolutely.
So I think, I would say that's the new epicenter. But application does not run on its own. It runs in the infrastructure, and it's delivered by a lot of, capabilities, and technology is protected by a lot of things. So I think that comes back to one of the integration we did with Stellar Cyber at F5 is to bring that application firewall application, sort of API type of visibility into the bigger scheme of things. So the protection is holistic.
Yeah, well, F5's always had a foundation of being an ecosystem player, because you guys invented the application delivery controller. And I was telling you earlier, without sharing too much of my age, that I was selling the first one with Cabletron with you guys. But that's a way of thinking, right? And I think a lot of security providers don't think that way. So this is why we're so into open together. But what kind of words can you give the audience today? Because we went from servers to VMs to containers. Each one of those, same problem. It broke best practices, opened new doors of business and opportunity, but boy, it also opened doors for the hackers to come in and, aha, I don't think you're watching that door yet. So can you give us any thoughts as we go through digitization, using those APIs, going to pure digital transformation globally? Everybody does it, everybody believes in it. How can we become more proactive about security, Haiyan, instead of reacting?
Yeah, I think that's the utopia, right?
It is utopia, so it's a tough question, so sorry to put you on the spot.
Security being, proactive. I think there's several practical things people, I see they're already doing, right? One is to always think of security at the very beginning of the design, and what controls, because instrumenting applications at the very beginning is a lot easier than refactoring and retrofitting security into it. So sort of knowing that is going to be so important to your business and think about security from the very beginning. How do you enable visibility? How do you enable controls? And how do you build with the best practices so the scanning and things can happen in a dynamic way, right? So that's, I would say, is number one. The number two, I came from the same world, so I still have a strong belief that is the paradigm is a mindset. The mindset that people in security sometimes, gosh, if I can just build this airtight solution and all my apps is secure, my identity is secure, then I'm good. I think that mindset doesn't really always pan out, and the mindset needs to be, well, just assume it's not, if, it's when. And when you do that, you think about how do I instrument my environment? How do I enable visibility? How do I enable automated response and controls? I think that's where the XDR, sort of the openness and the concept of XDR comes to play. Is about detecting and responding. It's about detecting and responding at machine speed. It's about detecting and responding at wherever the control needs to be, wherever the application is.
Yeah, it's a different way of looking at a control plane if you think about it that way, which is part of my history in networking. So one of the things you said, it was in there, and I want to just pull it out because I think it's really wise and smart to share with everybody. Security isn't always at the table when all these inventors are creating these new paradigm shifts, are they, Haiyan? And wouldn't it be nice if people brought the security team in and said, okay, I'm going to tell you about a new idea, but you're not going to sleep tonight because you're going to think about the 90 new ways that we've just opened a door. Where do you see the community in recognizing that? Are we visionaries here today and we're the first to say that? Do you see more and more organizations saying, please bring security in earlier into the process?
I actually, if you get to know me, I'm always a glass half full person. So I would tell you, if I look back, just the sheer amount of questions you get from the audiences that, I was on a panel, and I think the mindset has progressed so much. So I would encourage, be encouraging and say, I think we've come a long way as an industry. But is it enough? It's not, right? Yeah. So I think the way to bring more, the more sort of extended community to really think like the security professionals is to really sometimes, unfortunately, to live through some breaches and things. I think that usually get people sort of up to speed really quickly. Not that I'm saying, that's the only way to learn, but there's enough learnings in the last year or so. I've seen a lot of organizations and people, including the one I'm in right now. It's just really exhilarated learning, and I'm very encouraged.
I agree. Learning from mistakes is part of human nature, but we can actually learn from the mistakes to learn how to be more proactive, I think, is the way to summarize that. So I want to go a little fun here for a second. I know you love to hike on the weekend. Tell us if you think there's a big analogy between security technology and going up a mountain, Haiyan. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's professionals. Professionals like some of them who are sitting there when you come to hiking, they're like, way over there. And so I think realizing security is also different organizations are at different maturity level and different capabilities. So there's no one size fits all. So just be aware of what you're capable of. And in hiking, I think that's one of the things is to always know where you're going. And it's hard to say, hey, I'm just going to go on a hiking trip and then not prepared. So knowing what type of terrain and things, be mentally prepared, be physically prepared, be even materially prepared, I think just make that trip so much more enjoyable. But in the meantime, I think for security or hiking, it's sometimes you never know what you're gonna. The weather and things. So having the training and the capability to adapt and respond to a situation and come through, whatever the difficulty is, I think there's a lot of analogies we can draw from there.
I love that. I can clearly see you are a cup half full person, and it's about the journey. Haiyan, is there anything you want to share with the audience that I didn't ask today that you want to put out there for people to know there's hope, there's something to learn, something you want to share?
I think, the fact that coming to RSA, first of all, I don't know if you all feel the same. I was just so happy to see the energy is back to the city. And during the last 2 years, I think it was just, not as vibrant. So I'm just super glad to see people and to see the community coming back together. But sort of in my new world, I would just share, I think applications and APIs going to be really sort of more and more the powerhouse behind how we live, how we do business, and think about security in that way, and make sure your apps and APIs sort of are protected, but don't just think of them in a silo, because it's the overall environment is where application is, where the user is, and protect them where they are. I think goes back to being open and being extended, and I think that speaks to your Open XDR concept.
It does, and it's a great way to summarize everything we've talked about, Haiyan. So everybody give it a shout out for Haiyan here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of the summit.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.